Hello everyone. I'm taking a break from my normal stuff to show you a little slice of my studio. I got a little blessing of Nurgle this week, and that kind of threw my game off with the next real video that I'm trying to make. But I didn't want to leave you hanging, so I figured I would do something a bit different and show off a project of mine. This little beauty is one of my future entries to the Verko's Fall MSP, held at Las Vegas Open in October. What is it? I'm not sure. To explain it, I gotta talk a little bit about the context in which it came up. There are pretty much two paths you can take to stand out as an artist. The first is to create things that are so technically impressive that people have no choice but to recognize your artisanal skills. The second is to create something that is still good in technicality, but is unique. In other words, be masterful or be different. The miniature painting world is one that tends to reward the first approach. Our flagship competition, the one that most people know and recognize, is the Golden Demon, and said competition values painting artisanship over anything else. Take a look at your average Golden Demon show and you're looking at tens and thousands of hours of labor. Benjamin Cantor reported spending about 558 hours sculpting and painting Maximum Carnage. That level of dedication deserves an award, but it does highlight a certain problem. Since the internet has allowed for such rapid dissemination of information, there's also been a rapid advancement in the technical level of pieces. This is good, we all want to see great models, but the hill you have to climb to even begin creating things that are technically impressive enough to stand out on isn't a hill, it's a sheer asymptotic mountain of atomic level pigment placement. Since I don't like spending 20 hours glazing a single model's foot, I'm of the second option, but that comes with its own problems. It may seem easier to just be different in art, but when it comes to actually being different, not so much. Since for painting stock kits and miniatures, you have little control over the form in which you paint, and thus, standing out is quite challenging unless you're willing to sculpt your own things. That's great, but adding another discipline of art to your skill set, that's not exactly easy. There's great range in how each person paints the same sculpt, but it's hard to be visually distinct when that's the case. Not impossible, painters like Kaha, for example, have very recognizable painting styles. There is one feature that does separate one artist from another, and that is genre. More so than any kind of technical skill, strong sense of genre is what makes an artist. Think of any creative type. Monet, Mira, Mozart, some other dude whose name begins with M. They're noteworthy for the specific kind of art that they made. It's not that certain genres are better or worse than one another, it's that specific genres appeal to specific people. Let's remember that before VTubers started getting in on it, Warhammer was once a hobby that only the most elite of nerds were into.
Is this where they're gonna start talking about the Slanesh?
And why? Well, because they liked miniatures and games that involved them. There's other reasons too, but you get the point. What I'm getting at here is that a certain kind of art is going to appeal to a certain kind of person and bounce off others. So to do that, you gotta hone in on some idea, cuteness, horror, fantasy, in my case, perceptual trickery, aka illusions. I was drawn to these things as a child. The way that they screw your perceptions of how things work has always fascinated me. Artists like MC Escher were particularly interesting. I had a set of foam lizards that you could assemble like a mat and a puzzle of his House of Stairs lithograph. So to show off, I decided to try to recreate his Relativity thing in miniature. While classified as an illusion, I would state that this is much more of an interesting display of perspective and gravity. We have 3 points of perspective and thus 3 correct upward perspectives. With most illusionary art, some sort of impossibility is being conveyed, like, triangles that violate perspective laws. That is possible to recreate in real life, though you need some fancy manipulation to the z-axis to make it happen. Here, though, the only thing that's impossible is the differing directions of gravity. From a construction standpoint, this could exist in 3 dimensions, and many have realized it in 3D programs and a couple in real life, but I just not seen too many that have a sense of adding more flavor to it than what has already come beforehand. The idea is to recreate this scene, but as a miniature dungeon with adventurers delving through it. Dungeon of the Mad Mage, you could call it. So we can take some artistic liberties to make it ours, while also making it clear that's homage to Escher. Looking to the illustration, we can see Escher cut the entire thing into little clearly defined layers, probably so he can make it easier on himself to track everything. Which is good, because that means I can actually take a regular measurement to build it out. For large terrain projects like this, the best material we can use is foam, as it is light, durable, and shapeable to our needs. Specifically, extruded polystyrene foam, also known as XPS foam, also known as XPS insulation, as that is its intended purpose. You can find this stuff at the home improvement store for cheap considering how much you get with a single sheet of this stuff. What's useful here is that it's an inch thick, which means it's perfect to make this project with. I've cut 3 sections of plywood to fit a 12-inch cube shape, and then I've secured them together with tape, and then cut foam to fill the cube out. Since I plan to travel this work, I don't know how I'll do that yet, I have to mind how sturdy it is. While pure foam would be lighter, I don't know how much I could trust it. Turning the picture 90 degrees to the left, we can see there's a far simpler image to understand and make decisions on, which is how, for the most part, I built and cut things to fit how it is now. I got myself a new toy recently in the form of a benchtop bandsaw, so I can cut stuff to shape in my project. I debated on getting a hot wire foam cutter, but since I need to cut more than just foam at this moment, and a precise tool of that nature was more expensive, I decided on this instead. Here's how I make the stairs. First, I dimensioned a square edge on a piece of XPS foam with a saw, and I mark out 1/4-inch intervals both in the middle and edges of the piece so I can make accurate lines. Then, I tediously make a grid using said lines, and mark out the shape of the stairs using a pen to show where the areas are to go. Then, I move to the bandsaw and start cutting everything. I won't say that this procedure is totally safe, but it allowed me the space to discuss some good tool practice here. It kinda grinds my balls to hear people talk about certain tools as if they're filled with antagonistic machine spirits that are just looking to shiv you. There are tools like that, and certainly if you're not smart about how you work with anything, then they are going to turn into your average limiter, even this one. Something like an angle grinder is amongst the sketchiest of crackheads when it comes to dangerous tools, but a bandsaw is relatively safe, at least as far as a sawtooth metal band moving at 2,500 feet per minute can be. The best way I would describe good safety procedure is to always imagine the material you're cutting vanishing from existence. If it were to do so, would you find some part of you getting fed into the business end of whatever is happening? If the answer is yes, then you're doing it wrong. Most of my hand actions here are either static and guiding the material, or moving laterally to the blade. With all that in mind, I cut some of this foam to shape and make a nice set of stairs. To cut the surface finish of the foam being a little too smooth or too rough, I plan on covering things with a thin layer of light modeling paste. This will leave a tooth surface that can receive paint later, though I'm not sure how I'll do all that right now. I sit down with my work and block out some of it using toothpicks and tape to see how everything fits together. When it comes to complicated builds like this, I find a lot of my work is just looking at the thing and trying to figure out the next step. At my current junction, the best thing I can do is to refer to the picture in many different orientations to see how everything fits together. One thing I'm sort of tripped up on right now is this little section on the edge of the composition here. Since I want the model to be easy to look at, I'm not so sure how well it'll fit in with everything. In such cases, it's good to look at other examples of how people approach similar problems. Oftentimes, your amazing original idea isn't so original. In my case, a few people have tried making models of this beforehand. This 3D print by Bob McNeil shows this part in question as having actually been much easier than I thought previously. Thanks, Bob. And so far, this is feeling pretty good at this stage. Next steps for me are probably going in with some more serious cuts and removing this extra stuff, making more stairs and realizing the whole thing more thoroughly. If you think this kind of idea of vlogging this process is interesting, then please leave a comment saying so. I'm not entirely certain people are interested in documentations of this nature. Take care, and have a good one.